In cannabis, there are different cues and different understandings and different relationships and tones and messages that you could use to pull people in.
Hey guys, my name is Sid Patel and I'm here at the Cannabis Drinks Expo, San Francisco. I'm here with David. He's a branding expert. He's written this great book called Branding Bud. He's been in the industry for about 10 years. He's worked with major companies on branding, American Express, MasterCard, Pepsi, and that's just a few of them. I really want to chat with you, David, on some tips you can give to the entrepreneurs trying to get into the space, trying to create cannabis brands, trying to make their own labels. So over to you.
Well, the thing I always think when it comes down to cannabis brands and cannabis branding is starting off with the customer. Knowing who your customer is the most important. If you know what your customer is, who they are, what their need states are, what their rituals are, you can create a brand that's meaningful. And so by starting off with the customer, I always think that's the first spot. Mm-hmm. Understanding what their need states and rituals are, which really leads into form factors. Mm-hmm. If you understand how they consume, when they consume, and what's important to them, you'll start to understand that maybe it's discrete consumption or indiscrete consumption, which would then lead you either toward a smokable or a non-smokable. But that, from form factor, leads you into then the ability to understand who they are, how they consume, and then overlaid onto that is a brand archetype. Okay. And currently there are 14 brand archetypes in the cannabis space. A brand archetype is really a shortcut for marketing. So a celebrity, a novelty brand, a foodie brand, a wellness brand, a counterculture brand. Those are essentially brand archetypes. And so if you can get everything right and lined up with the customer and how and when they consume, and overlay it with a look and feel, graphics, colors that really appeal to what they're looking for, then you've sort of covered the 4 pillars to create a meaningful brand. And I think that's really key. But it all starts with knowing who your customer is.
Absolutely. Are there any tactical tips you've learned that this color actually works well in cannabis, or this kind of font? If you can have noticed some things like that?
Sure. Well, I mean, it's changing now, but in the early days, I would say 85% of all cannabis brands were blue and green and had a pot leaf in their logo.
Yes.
So that starts to beg the question, how do I differentiate my brand?
Correct.
And so there are brands now that are really leveraging those archetypes to create meaningful brands that really apply to a specific customer.
The industry is so new, right? So what people don't want to do is obviously create and invest so much in the name. So for example, like I named my show Cannabis Drinks Expo. So I don't have to, if it was something like Sid's Expo, then I would have just had to do so much marketing that this is a cannabis show.
Right.
So I'm sure all brands play around with the green or the leaf or can or cannabi or something.
Yep.
I guess, how do you come across that? Because it's going to be a hard job to just come up with a simple name which has no meaning to cannabis relation in the name, because you'll have to invest a lot in making a brand.
That's true. So I think the strategy is very much like you took in naming this show, descriptive. And if you can start off with a descriptive name or a name that has can or something like that in it, I think that's the beginning stages. And I think that happens because, one, these companies want people to know there's cannabis in it or it has to do something with cannabis. But 2, the market's really limited right now. So you do have to be specific, not only in your naming, but also in your marketing.
In trademarks and all that.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think longer term, there'll be more opportunity, more money to be made, more money to be invested, which then helps you build out your name, which might not be associated with the cannabis
What
industry.
are your thoughts on D2C, like internet brand, let me call it? Actually, that's the word I want to go at. Like, what kind of branding works if you were to focus on direct sales on internet versus dispensary sales? Have you got any clean differences that this is what you should do if it was meant for a display, and this is what you should do if it's on an internet?
Yeah, it's really intriguing. So if you just take the 2 words, cannabis and marijuana, and you talk about keyword searches, marijuana is probably 8 to 10 times stronger than cannabis.
Oh, okay.
But you're appealing to a different clientele. So it really depends on who you want to appeal to. Or is it B2B? Is it maybe a newer state coming on where people still call it marijuana? Maybe some of the older states where there's some lineage, California, for example, people are more concerned about the word marijuana and the baggage it has with it. So I really think it comes down to knowing who your consumer is, because to do internet marketing and to use a keyword, marijuana or cannabis, I think you'll really find that there's two different segments. And so you really just need to figure out who's your consumer. Is it B2B? Is it B2C? If it's B2C, how does that segmentation break out? And what are those customers looking for?
Got it.
And so it's beyond the marijuana and cannabis, and then it's all the other keywords that relate into their lifestyle and sort of really touch their lives.
So you said, final question is, you said knowing your customer is the thing. You start there, and that's the majority of the work. And you said how they consume and those kind of things. What are the other three questions you would want to ask in your research, which would allow you to know your customer?
Yeah, well, certainly, when you break it down, I always think of 6 concentric circles, right? In the center, there's the core consumer. That core consumer is really probably consumes every day, is really most of the people who are here today, right? They're in the industry, they consume on a daily basis. Outside of the core, you start to get kind of casual, then you get, the kind of curious, then you get the kind of contra on the most outer.
I like those
core.
words, yeah.
Yeah, and it's really concentric circles and a rippling effect. And I often like it to, if you're talking to somebody that's, we're out at a swimming pool and they're a professional swimmer, you don't really need to coax them into the pool. You don't need to talk to them in a way. They're going to dive in, they're going to dive in the deep end, they're going to be into it. But a kind of curious person, or in this analogy, someone that's interested in swimming, but is a little afraid of the pool. Maybe the water's too cold. Maybe they're afraid of the deep end. So you have to talk to them differently. You have to say, come on in. The water's not so cold. We're in the shallow end. I have a life preserver for you, right? That's how you coax somebody into the pool. So in the same sense, in cannabis, there are different cues and different understandings and different relationships and tones and messages that you could use to pull people in. And it really depends on who they are. But at the end of the day, I think what's most important is the canna curious is a bigger population than the cannabis consumer.